Okay, welcome to the first ever, and hopefully the only one in a long time, virtual choral festivals in coming from Jackson Hole, Wyoming. My name is Laura Hucken. I am artistic director for Cathedral Voices, and I am so excited to kick off this festival and with a wonderful conversation with three amazing individuals that have been an inspiration to many through their mentorship, through their musicianship, and their leadership. And I'd like to take a moment to introduce them to you all. Up to my left, I don't know where it is on your screen, I have Dr. Joe Michael Scheibe. He is from University of Southern California. I also have Dr. Jeffrey Bors from University of Washington in Seattle. And there he is waving his hand. And last but not least, Dr. Nicole Lamartine from University of Wyoming, who is also headed to UC Santa Barbara this fall. So thank you so much for being here. I guess this is one of the very, very few silver linings of our situation is the chance that we can actually connect like this from our various places in the world for a moment and have a really meaningful conversation about music and its impact and where we are going with all of this. So to get us started, I thought we could go around the room, so to speak, around the table, and maybe each of you take a moment and let us know the current situation where you are with regards to your teaching, your conducting, what the normal looks like for you right now. And perhaps we could start with Nicole.
Sure. So when we went into shutdown in Wyoming in mid-March, the University of Wyoming, which is the only four-year institution in the state, the department head for music decided that there would be no more ensembles. It was just a decision that was made. And so that was surprising to me because I came back from ACDA having talked to all of my colleagues saying, we're going to do all of these really cool and amazing things and connect people, because we anticipated that the connection is what our students and our colleagues would thrive with the most. So I came back from our spring break saying, wow, that was big for me. We're not doing ensembles anymore. One of my ensembles didn't have a concert at all, and we met by Zoom for the rest of this semester once a week just to check in, to see what the students were up to and see what they were able to do and how their transition was going. But then the rest of my coursework, my conducting class and my graduate conducting students, as well as my voice lessons, they all went online. And I think that my colleagues can agree that it's a learning curve for everybody. And that was a good challenging opportunity.
I bet. How about for you, Jeffrey?
Well, like Nicole says, we're all in the same boat. We're just learning and trying to find our way and try to figure out, how we're going to survive and what our particular gifts are or attitudes are, and to lean on those strengths and then learn from everybody else. Seattle was, as you might have heard, was one of the first places or the first area for the outbreak to occur in any kind of large way. So we kind of got a head start, but luckily the University of Washington has got one of the leading medical research schools in the country. In fact, the part of the science that is actually tracking how the disease is going to go is located at the University of Washington. So we've had kind of long range bad news for a long time. So the advantage of that is that when we went into spring quarter, we designed all of our choirs to kind of do different kinds of experimenting. So we had one of our choirs turn into just helping our treble voices grow by learning solo repertoire. And say the choir that I conduct, we were testing a new online assessment and music learning platform and teaching choral artistry. Another one was doing a lot of different tracks of learning things about choral music and doing composition and improvisation, etc. So we've really been doing a lot of experimenting, and now we're at a time where it's looking like we won't be able to rehearse in the fall together. And so in any kind of large group, so we're trying to look at what design that will look like. And of course, my big concern right now is we have a lot of things that are non-singing oriented that we can do. And my focus right now is how do we keep our people singing?
Hmm. Yeah. And how do you support the singer, the solitary singer, by
Exactly.
themselves in their
Exactly.
lonesome, practice room called home?
Exactly.
Right.
Hmm. How about you, Mike?
Well, I think for us, it's been a real interesting semester, I would say. You know, we're on a semester system. I happen to have planned a tour over the last 2 years with grant writing to take the choir tomorrow to
Oh,
Taiwan and Thailand.
Ooh.
Uh, and about, I would say probably sometime in mid February, I got cold feet. And so I had a Fulbright scholar from Ireland, and I called him and I said, Michael, I'm thinking of just changing the tour direction and taking it to Europe and take it to Ireland. And so Michael and I ran real quick and we worked hard. And by March 1st, we kind of had a tour planned. And then Ireland shut down. And then I had to tell the students that. And I think we see these as really growth opportunities for all of us. And as a I've been at this a long time, and I think that this has been a great opportunity for me to learn some things. Number one, I learned about taking something like this and trying to turn it in a direction for my students that remains positive. Um, I came back from ACDA. I had a huge group of students there. We heard wonderful performances, um, absolutely outstanding performances. I think one of the stronger Western Division conventions I've been, or conferences I've been to. And we came back, and that was the first week of March, 11th of March. I was just telling Jeffrey, that we all of a sudden had a notice in the email that said on the 13th, you're going to start teaching online for 3 days before spring break. On the 15th, we were told, oh no, you're going to go till April 15th and you'll close out the semester. And then finally, we ended up being continually through the semester. I chose to do something different with my ensemble. Each ensemble in the school decided to do different things. So with me, I kind of asked the students some questions. I said, if there was something you wanted to say to a choral director, what would it be? I'm not talking about me, I'm talking about any choral director, somebody you've worked with. What would you want to tell them? Give me three things. And I took those three things and then I designed guest lecturers to come in and talk. So cultural appropriation was one of the things, and so we had Rollo Dilworth come in and talk about it because he's on Chorus America and it's one of his big topics. I had programming as one of the things that some of my grad students were interested in. So I brought Jason Max Ferdinand in. I brought Eric Whitaker in. I brought in a whole slew of 9 lectures I think we had in total over that course of time. And we meet twice a week. So it took me a couple days to get it going. And April 1st, we started these twice a week events. And it worked out really well. What I am concerned about is the fact that we haven't sung together. I was working on a video, a viral video, which I can only say I abhor. But I was asked to do it by the administration. So, okay, we're going to take it on. And I remember sitting there while the students, I was listening to the tracks as they were laid down, and I'm saying, why are you taking a breath there? Why are you doing that? Why are you breathing like that? And then I'm thinking about the difference in live performance and real performance.
Mm-hmm.
Virtual performances, as you will, is the other opposite. And I kept thinking about that breathing. And I kept thinking about how we breathe together, and we don't breathe as an individual the same way as we breathe as an ensemble. And then I thought about the pandemic and what that means for my singers. and the health of my singers if we open too soon and we start breathing the way we normally breathe, because you really hear it accentuated on a microphone. Very much so when they're recording their piece, even if they'd known it, if they knew it well. So I think for me, Nicole, when you don't start until September, right? Late September?
Yes, but I've had the opportunity to work with both of the UCSB choirs this quarter because I didn't have my ensemble on obligation here at UW. So
Okay.
that's been a wonderful opportunity. So yes, we
Great.
start later.
Wow.
Okay, so
Wow.
you do start later. See, we start early. We start about I think the classes actually begin the third week of August, and we have the students back second week of August. And I know as a major metropolitan university like UW and Santa Barbara, in a sense, is that there's a great loss of music making. I mean, the LA Phil is taking a huge hit in their budget. I mean, it is humongous to think of what a major orchestra has to do. I have several students, former students, who are working at the LA Phil in both arts leadership in the LA Chamber Orchestra, and they're all saying the same thing. They've been furloughed, and the singers in the LA Master Chorale are trying to keep them paid through this term for the contracts they've been contracted for. But I think that the deeper question is, how soon do we return, and when is it safe to return, and what do we do in the meantime, and what do we make sure we do if we come back in some smaller form than we are today? So those are just some questions I pose.
Yeah, Jeffrey, you look like you wanted to chime in with a comment.
Well, I was just wanted to jump on what Mike was sharing about breathing, and it turned my brain to that we have to begin the conversation with our singers, all of you that are gathered here watching today, about what is possible. And what is possible is that even though we can't hear one another while we're singing, and we're all singing alone, we're trapped in our little rectangles, and what we can breathe together, and that's the foundation of what it is we do. It's the lifeblood of what we do, is we breathe together and we shape our breath and we breathe intentionally for resonance and for rhythm and just for the musical intention that is about to be uttered. And that, and we think about it physiologically, our hearts start beating at the same time, and we start feeling one another's feelings. And whether it's quantum mechanics or magic or the Holy Spirit, whatever your worldview is, that is not dependent upon whether I'm 6 inches from you or looking at you here. We can breathe together and our hearts will still beat together. And the empathy and the sinuousness that is choir community can still be had. And we just have to become really intentional about it, though, because it happens a little more naturally in a rehearsal room. Here, we have to develop it. And so I really thank you, Mike, for bringing that whole idea of how important breath is, and breathing, and shaping that, because that is really the starting point of what we can do.
I'd like to hop in here.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think we breathe as one. And I think that is that community that singers and choral ensembles in general are. Nicole.
So absolutely, I agree with you both so fundamentally. And I was reminded of a study that was done in England, and I think it was in 2006 or so. And they put musicians in an MRI, and they put a solo person in the MRI, and they watched what happened to the brain when that person sang alone. And there were some, little fireworks here and there. But as soon as someone was standing outside of the MRI and they were singing together and they were making music together, an entire different part of the brain lit up, and so much more strongly than it did when they were singing alone in the MRI. So that study is just reminding me how important it is for this connection, this human connection. And I do believe it starts with the breath. And so now our challenge is to find ways that we can connect humanly through our breath and through that unspoken connection that we feel and we hear when we are singing together.
So, kind of taking that a step further, when it comes to your philosophy as a conductor and what you feel your obligation, your role is that you play for your singers, whether it's at college or if it's a community ensemble that you conduct, um, how how has that changed? Or have you had different thoughts on what is my role now?
I had a really neat meeting this last week with a bunch of college choir directors in the Northwest. And this came up not as a question, but it just kind of, we had our tail between our legs a little bit. And we said, we're stuck. We can't work with a group of people. We don't have this luxurious sound coming at us now that we can shape it, and make the sound that we want to have happen, or the artistic statement to happen. We can't work with a group like that. All of a sudden we're faced with the fact that, we don't teach individual artistry very well as a culture. Now,
Mhm.
some of us do, and people here on the screen do, but as a choral culture across this country, we don't build choral artists very well. And what I mean by that is giving, empowering the singer with artistic uh, decision-making tools so that they can walk out of our rehearsal and go someplace else and be artists, as well as the obvious things like sight reading and oral skills. And then the other thing we don't teach very well is just the vocal health, in terms of how do I navigate this beast that is choral repertoire that isn't quite like my solo voice, and it has different demands on my voice, and what can I do in a healthy way to make these different sounds I have to make, and then have techniques that I own. And so we were all kind of blushing in the fact that, this is the direction we have to go to build choral artists at this time, and focus on the individual b- growing into a collective, as opposed to the opposite.
I would agree completely. And as I said, I had the opportunity to teach this spring quarter for UCSB, and I chose to take that exact approach: is how do we build the individual choral artist from the ground up? So how do we understand and interpret rhythm? How do we sight read? What's the process? How do we interpret musical notation differently between people? How do we learn a piece of music? How do we make the vowels come to life in terms of all of the beautiful resonance that we can create individually? And then how do we create musicality? What are these things that we see on the page, and how do we individually interpret them and make them come to life in our own voices? And then the whole idea of the frosting on top of the cake, which is the text. How do we make that text come alive
Hmm.
physically, technically, with our vowels and consonants? But then how do we create that mental and emotional connection? So that's been really interesting for me to approach that, because that hasn't been my approach.
What about you,
I don't
Mike?
think that was any of our approaches at some point. I think we've all been shaped over the course of our careers. I keep thinking of some comments made when there was a guest in our room that happened to be a very distinguished conductor, and he said you give them a lot of um, uh, latitude in talking to you about interpretation, in talking about what you're doing or why we're doing what we're doing. And then I think back on a session again at Salt Lake City with Jonathan Talberg, actually talking about the importance of starting with the text. That's one thing that we have as choral musicians that's so prevalent, that we have all the problems of it, but we have the beauty of the text. We pick our music because of the beauty of the text. It reaches us, it hits us some part between either the head or the soul and the heart. Um, but I keep thinking about, this is the opportunity now, much what Jeff just said, that if I if I'm able to meet with my ensemble of probably 8 rather than 36, I'm going to have to rethink how I schedule that, just in terms of, can I put lots of smaller ensembles together and say, okay, you're going to do these part songs, you're going to do these part songs, or are we going to do the Neue Liebeslieder, the Liebeslieder, and the TB? There'll be a group of 8 singers doing the TB, and a group of 8 singers doing the SA, and an SATB octet. Just thinking differently out of the box. We've been told that the social distancing in our facility needs to be 15 feet apart. That's very scary in our facility. Our facility seats 90 in an audience, the one we rehearse in. That means I can get 8 singers, a conductor, and a pianist in a room. That's it.
Wow. Wow.
That's the reality. So what I've got to do is I'm rethinking scheduling. How do I schedule differently? So maybe there's maybe another place that they sing. We've been told we can go outside and sing. Thank goodness we're in Southern California, not in Wyoming in December.
Oh,
But or raining in Seattle. Yeah. But what I'm thinking of is rethinking the rep and looking at maybe putting together a madrigal group and a part song group and looking at the repertoire that's out there, because there's this vast body of literature that I haven't spent any time with anymore. I did that as a high school teacher. I spent a lot of time with madrigals, but I'm thinking there's all this great rep. There's the Trois Chansons of Debussy and Ravel. There's all of this great rep, the Hindemith chansons. I mean, you could do this great program using these small, and what it's going to do is it's going to teach them more independence.
That's right.
And maybe,
Here.
Get them to take responsibility. You're only going to meet with me once a week. I'll come in and you've got to take care of this other stuff during the rest of the time. And when you come back, we hide singers in our ensemble, right? We are able to take a lesser singer and have them grow through that. Some of them grow, some of them stay where they are. And this gives us an opportunity to make some of this stuff happen. I wanted to just maybe take it a different direction too, which is to talk about the community choirs. I think it was Chorus America said there are 250,000 community choirs in the United States today. Is that the last reading I had of the document, the latest report? If I were a community choir conductor, I'd have to really be rethinking everything if social distancing is required. Certainly everybody's pointing to the people in the community choir out in Washington. That's gotten a lot of play, or the group in Netherlands that just did a St. John Passion, I think it was, where most of the singers got sick and some passed away. So we have to rethink that. We have to rethink the ventilation. I mean, basic things. We've been told at our institution that we're going to have to put breaks between each class to allow time for there to be disinfecting of the facility. I think it behooves all of us to do as much reading as we can about this so that we're armed, and that when we're armed and seated at the table, and hopefully we're seated at the table where these decisions are being made, is that we can come back and say, well, wait a minute here. This is, I agree with you to this point, but here's some other information you might want to have. I have a COVID-19 file on my computer and a hard copy of all the articles that's sitting here in my office. And I share them with the powers that be at USC, because I know that they're going to they will do what's best for the students. They'll do what's best for us older faculty members, but they'll also do what's best for the university. But they have to have that information. And I think it's coming so fast and quick that none of us know what's really going to happen 2 months from now.
Well, I appreciate you mentioning something about the community choirs. And I mean, there's this whole network of individuals, that are not at a university. And so they sing in various spaces, right? They could, the basement of a church, or it's, maybe the director also directs the high school choir, and so they have access to the choir room, or it's a community arts center, or it's somebody's living room. And so all these groups, and mine included, and many of the groups that are involved in this festival, there's that question of how do we approach this? And for them, there's this the sense of community and the social aspect of people that they connect with, that they bond with in a different way because they're making music. They aren't. It's not a connection because of a shared political or religious or social belief. It's a connection through music, and to lose that kind of bond or that opportunity to relate is a struggle. And I've seen it and heard about it firsthand as we've been putting these virtual choir videos together for this weekend.
But I also can congratulate you too, though, Laura, in terms of your Cathedral Voices program. You're really on the right track. And I think in terms of what we're looking at the future, how you have your pullout groups. And I think for a time, those pullout groups will be kind of where you have to live, whether it's a treble voices group or your voice is 8 and whatnot. You might have to develop different ones depending on and I think I'm finding the same thing as a school or university teacher or working with public school teachers, that we might develop these smaller ensembles based on what the student needs or wants to learn.
Mm-hmm.
If they're not comfortable singing independently, that would be a really good group to have, to where we put things together to where everybody at the end of that experience is okay singing by themselves. And then there are people that are okay singing by themselves and they want to build independence, then there's another group, and et cetera, et cetera. And we can define it by where we are in our journey as a choral artist. And community choir members have a real diverse background that way and diverse interests that way. And it might be really interesting to see how community groups divide up into small ensembles, maybe have a concert of small ensembles once things get to the point where we can begin performing as well.
Yeah.
I was thinking too, Laura, that especially for the community groups in the US, so many of these singers are avocational singers who may or may not read music. And I think many of them come to the community choral experience to learn music together. And it's that process of learning the music together that gives them a sense of confidence, a sense of place within the ensemble. And so how do we give them those feelings? How do we provide an experience that replicates that experience, that is not a full choral rehearsal? And so just thinking about how we learn music, and we place such great value in sight reading and teaching musical skill. And so maybe this is the time as choral music educators, community leaders, where we step back and say, here's a sound file and you can listen to it. And once you feel confident with singing with your part, then we can come together and experiment and experience the music together rather than learning the music together. I think that for so many of these community members, it's a real loss that they're feeling. We're all feeling it, but I think especially for the community singers, because it might be their one time during the week where they get to come together and really do something that is different from their everyday experience.
Yeah.
Well, and I think there's also the ability of doing some unison things. There is a beauty of that unison singing, whether that's Dallas conference, where there was a German choir that sang Down by the Sally Gardens, the Britain, and did this absolutely unison. It was a TB ensemble, and they did this entire piece unison. It was the most beautiful artistic thing I'd heard. I remember Toronto Children's Choir, the first time I heard them at San Antonio, I think it was the San Antonio conference. Beautiful setting, unison. We can teach so much good voice. We can teach them intonation. We can do all of that. We can do it with whomever's in the room. You don't need to be able to sight read. You could teach to people that haven't been in your choir. and get them. Here's a primer. We're not going to be doing concerts in the fall. I know that. My orchestral conductor friends haven't figured that out yet. But because they want to do a Beethoven 9, I mean, that's all good and well, but we're not going to be doing that for a while, at least not in Los Angeles. So knowing that, we can choose to help our community members and gather other ones to join us and maybe do some things that are outside of our normal times. I do think we've got to rethink our 2 hour slot on Mondays and Wednesdays or whatever that may be, or I'm always on Tuesday nights and it's 90 singers. That's not going to happen. So how do we make that a great experience, and how do we maybe bring others into the fold? So it's an opportunity to help recruit new members, if not to the choir, to the art form, so they can become the audience.
Well said. I wanted we'll keep talking, but I did want to mention that we are on YouTube Live, and so anyone who is listening in, if you have any burning questions, just let us know in the chat below the video, and type it in and let us know if you have any questions for Mike or Nicole or Jeffrey about the state of singing. So please feel free to chime in if you'd like to. But let's go ahead and keep continuing the conversation. And one of the things that you all have kind of touched on a little bit is music's role in society. And I'm just curious if it sounds like we have an opportunity to rethink everything, how we do it, where we're going to do it, with whom, and then the question is why. And so I guess I would pose the question to you: how has music's role in society changed, or do you feel it is changing amidst what's happening now? That's deep.
That's a big question.
Big question.
So there are many, many answers.
I kind of have a feeling, just a knee jerk. I'm no expert, and I don't know the answer to that question. I'll just tell you that right off the bat. But what I've seen is that people's true colors have been exposed. And I see not music administrators, but school administrators using this as an opportunity to trim budgets. And I've seen the value of the singing, go up for any of us and our singers, and how, and I've seen great pain from a lot of teachers and students, and lamenting, and just great pain. So it's really brought out a lot of the depth and the richness and the hope that we have with this, but it's also brought out a little bit of the negative underbelly. And we hear from our federal administration about wanting to cut arts funding, and so I think we'll see a lot about what culture does. But then one other thing that I see such passion for innovation, and passion to solve this problem, and passion to try to figure things out. And I mean, we've heard just today from Nicole and Mike about all these great things that are already thinking about, and that gives me tremendous hope. And we'll come out of here with things we never imagined before. Composers are going to think differently, and our relationship with composers will change, because we see that they're our lifeblood, and we're going to want to help them thrive in a period of silence as well. And so we know something is going to happen, but I think that the value of what we have will become intensified, I think.
I'm remembering that yesterday was our graduation at USC, and the outstanding grad happens to be a singer in my chamber singers, but he was basically a pianist. He's a collaborative. He's actually a concert pianist. He sang for 3 years with me, and he was asked what his highlight of his 3 years at USC, or 4 years, was at SC. And he's DMA, so it's doctor now. And he commented that the highlight was for him the experience of singing in the group that prepared Considering Matthew Shepard with Craig Hella Johnson there. He said that that was the highlight of his musical career. Now, this is a student who's playing all the great rep. And that experience, because it was communal, it was that ability to wrap himself around something which had such deep discussion. I think that the music that's being written today is very, very deep. It's not to put down anything from dead white guys in the 18th century, but it is to say that there is this depth of repertoire, and there is so much music out there. So if I'm a composer and I now need to rethink how I write, and I think a lot of them will, I think there's already a lot of writing for orchestras going that way, or small instrumental ensembles. We're seeing a lot of that taking place. People are finding careers, not in just in string quartets, but in odd combinations of instruments. I think there's some great possibilities. And I think that the composers are itching to get there too. I think that my colleagues, I know in talking to the comp program at SC, the faculty there, they're all itching to go with smaller works as well, to have students write works, for us to maybe give that student the opportunity maybe they wouldn't normally have had as a freshman or sophomore. So that they get a voice in the room with 8 singers gives them tremendous information that they can go and take forward with that. I think the status of choral music as of March 1st of 2020 was pretty darn good. I would say that in my looking at the United States and where it is today, in general, and I was a person who lived through Prop 13 in California, where we were decimated in the 1970s, and I was a high school teacher at that point. I would say that we're in a much better place. We have much more technology. We have many more resources. We have people who are daring with their compositions. We have experimentation. We have people embracing contemporary music, but we also have people loving to do the early music, or to do Bach, or to do all of this rep. What a wonderful system that is. And then we have, excuse me for saying this, YouTube, where people can find great literature as well. I mean, I used to have to go through all the scores at the piano by myself, took thousands of hours every year. I still do that. But if I don't know a recording and somebody says, hey, have you heard this? I can go to YouTube. I don't have to wait for the album to come out, or I can go on Apple Tunes and pick it up, So I think we're in a better shape. I think the health of professional music is better than it has been in quite a while. I am concerned about some colleges and institutions closing because of this, and because of the budgetary concerns for small arts organizations and funding, which seems to be a question about support from NEA and NEH, those organizations that do support us. I think organizations like ACDA and Chorus America and NCC and NCCO and some of these organizations have really made a difference in what's happening in the United States today. And I'm glad to see some of these Nats, for instance. I mean, I hated that thing because it was all down for me. It just seemed like it was, but I think they'll come back with more information. We got the information delivered. We now are on the floor, and somebody's going to pick us up and help raise us up. And that's going to come from the people sitting at the table today, and the people that are sitting here on the panel, but also the people in the community. Just my 2 cents.
No, I appreciate you saying that, and finding some positive changes and awarenesses that are probably going to be coming out of this, or things that we might hope to carry forward. Are there certain things that are on your mind in that front? Kind of the silver lining of COVID. We all keep talking about it. There has to be some silver lining somewhere.
Maybe
have you had some moments that really?
Maybe at some point we'll get the latency in internet.
Uh,
Sorry, Laura. What I was going to say was maybe at some point the latency in internet will be gone, and we'll be able to move in real time and conduct a choir here, and they'll sing with us in time.
Yeah. So I loved hearing, Jeffrey, what you had to say, and also Mike, as in terms of how is music's role changed. And I think that music, especially choral music, it provides what the screen cannot. And I think we've seen that heightened over the last 5-10 years, but it's like on fast forward now. And so people are craving this human interaction that we can't get on the screen. And we are now forced to be on the screen even more. And so it's this deep craving and longing for this human interaction in our music making that we had before. And I think, Mike, you said that everything is so much more accessible now. We can go to YouTube and find these recordings. And I think there's a pro and con to that too.
Absolutely.
Everything is so accessible. We can get it, but everything is so accessible. And so who makes the value judgment of whether the music is good or great, or, so anybody can put anything on YouTube. And so now we, as choral professionals, do we now take the stand of making a judgment call, or do we just encourage everyone to make music and put it out there because that's what we need right now? And I think too that I'll just say my feel here about the virtual choir. It's being mandated by so many administrations, and personally, I just don't think it's a substitute for what we do, because it is not cultivating the musical skills or qualities that we normally would want in a choral ensemble. So it's cultivating a different thing. It's cultivating videography and music editing, which I think is a wonderful thing. And it gives us, at this point where we are, it gives us an opportunity to come together as a choir. But I just don't think it's the future of where we're going to go in this age of COVID. And one final thought. Our identity as musicians has changed immensely. The rug got pulled out from under us. We cannot do what we've trained all of our lives to do. And so I think this affords an opportunity for us to step back as choral professionals and say, what I did is not who I am. And in this moment of pausing our time, we can focus on and remember and affirm who we are as people. Because so oftentimes we are tied up in what we do, and the what we do becomes the who I am. And so that's something I've been thinking a lot about.
I love that. I love that. I've been using the word remember a lot with students in my community groups as well, because we're going to have to be good at remembering it. And I don't mean remember here. I think about the word remember as to remember, to get it into your members, your body. And we have to we get in touch with what our gifts are, vocally, artistically, physically, what our physical gifts are, and then what our personal gifts are. And the more aware of that is, then we can embody it more. But that's going to take discipline, and it's going to take leadership of conductors to do that, artist to artist, and singer to singer. And I'm with you, Nicole. I'm a choir director, but that's only part of who I am. And maybe I say right now I was a choir director, and I will be a choir director. But right now, what we have to come up with another name.
Yeah. I like choral professional, whatever that is.
Yeah, or vocal artist professional or something.
Yeah, love it.
And we don't have rehearsals anymore, choir rehearsals anymore. We still meet to rehearse. But I'm really trying to break that language up, say, with my students who are studying to be choir directors, because they're thinking, well, the bar is so low now. What we're capable of producing is so low. And well, if you're looking at it in terms of defining it as as a choir, like the olden days prior to March 1st, you know, yeah, I guess it's a lower bar, but it's a different bar.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we can embrace that new bar because we have to meet each other where we are at this moment. And that's how we're going to move forward.
Mm-hmm. And I wanted to speak to a little bit of what you said, Nicole, about the virtual choir. And on Sunday at 5 p.m., we're doing a wrap-up Zoom with all of the singers, or those that are available, that were in our virtual choir, to let them talk about their experience. And I will tell you, the biggest takeaway from everyone and every technique thing we've done, the Zoom masterclass with Dr. Boers, and the biggest takeaway is, this does not replace my choir. I want my choir back. I painfully want my choir back. I was grateful to hear myself sing by myself, but oh boy, it's a good internal experience for the individual singer, but it's a moment. It's a moment. And I you'll see with the videos that we show tonight and also tomorrow, our little 10-day virtual choir. We basically captured all their videos and then put them together in about 10 days.
Wow. It's a huge undertaking.
Yeah, we were crazy. And but it's not about making it perfect. It was about giving them a chance to sing and to connect, and at least not pull the rug entirely from underneath us amidst what they were pursuing and working on. And when I watched some of the individual videos and I saw them come together, for me personally, I could see the joy, but also some of the sorrow. I could sense it in what I was watching. These singers long for something more than this.
Mm-hmm.
Well, before we wrap this up, we're just about out of time, and I want to thank you all again for sharing your opinions and your wisdom and your excitement and your energy. But is there anything else that any of you would like to say before we say goodbye for now? You've said it all.
Thank you for inviting us. It's been real interesting, and to see my colleagues here as well. It's just been wonderful to listen to them and to hear and learn from them. So thank you, all of you, for this opportunity.
I agree. Absolutely. Every time I've done one of these collaborative sessions during the time of COVID, it lifts me up in a way that I didn't know I needed. And so thank you, Laura, for putting this together, not only for us three here on the screen, but for everybody who is watching.
Yeah, I want to echo that. Laura, you've become my hero over these last weeks. Your heart that you've shown and your drive and desire to create something for the people of that part of the state is just remarkable and honorable, and I just really admire your work. And the Jackson area is just blessed to have you.
Thank you so much. And if I can do something sort of, well, no, it's not silly, it's important, before we go, and that is just to acknowledge, because I know this has come up in our conversation, the funding and the support and how that's really needed, especially now, that singing is essential. Singing is of value, and it's important to everyone's vitality, let alone their sanity. I would like to just shout out and give some thanks where it's needed, and that's to the Wyoming Arts Council, that is funded by the National Endowment for the Arts and the Wyoming State Legislature, for supporting this festival among many other arts events around the state. They have done tremendous things to kind of help the individual artist, and also through the CARES Act to try and support groups that are hurting and struggling as they look down the road. I also wanted to thank Center of Wonder and the Town and County Arts for All grant that also supported this festival. And this is one of those moments, where local community and tax dollars are being given back to the community to support arts. And also the Wyoming Cultural Trust Fund that wants to keep culture alive and vibrant and essential to our state. and also to the Center for the Arts and Patrick Millard, who is sitting back in the booth. We're in this 550 seat theater, and there are 3 of us here today. The ability of any of this technology happening is not from me, it's from the Center for the Arts and Patrick Millard. So a big shout out to them as well for doing this. So thank you so much again. It's really nice to see all of your faces, and I hope it will happen again, maybe next time in person.
I hope so too.
Thank you, Laura.
Okay.
Yes,
Thank you,
thank you, Laura.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Yeah,
Take
y'all
care.
take care.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
commissioning choir sent me the text. In this case, they said, we would like you to write a piece and we have this text. What do you think of this? Yeah, I love that. It's singing. Here we go. Maybe the first or second time I read through the text, I just heard all this, like the dance. That concept just struck me from the outset. And from there, it was just a matter of unfolding it. Creator of all that is lovely. If you were to speak those words out loud a little faster than they unfold in the music, those are just speech rhythms. So much joy about life and the possibilities that are within life and living life to the fullest and making the most of every opportunity. Such a great theme there that kind of borders on the kind of sacred thing that matters a lot to me, but it's also broad enough where it's not limited to that. It's an idea that we can all latch onto wherever we're coming from. I personally liked the idea of like a prayer to the giver of life that resonates deeply and strongly with me. Is music going to happen? Are there actually people out there? Are we going to get together and sing? The music is out there. It's going to continue. Choirs haven't ended. Choirs have been singing for literally thousands of years, and this sometimes awful virus is not going to be the end of that. We're going to sing again. And as I put on Facebook several weeks ago, when we sing again, it will be from a place of much deeper gratitude and rich experience. Just thanks for what we have. We won't take it for granted. We're realizing ways that it's much more valuable than we even realized. Singing together is a rich treasure, and it'll be there waiting for us when all this passes over. So in the meantime, we can learn, we can encourage each other, we can connect as people, we can build our musicianship, explore aspects of things that we couldn't have otherwise. And when we come back together, we'll sing. It'll be there.
Okay, we got recording.